He had nothing, not even hope. The streets were cold, his coat was thin. People walked past him, like he was air, like he didn't exist, like he never had. He held out his hand. Nobody stopped. He whispered for help. Nobody heard. And the worst part, the very worst part, it wasn't the hunger, it wasn't the cold. It was the voice inside his own head. The one that said, "This is all you are." Have you ever felt that? Not the hunger, not the cold, but that voice, the one that sounds exactly like you, telling you that you are too small, too broken, too late. And the terrifying part is that somewhere along the way, you stopped arguing back. His name was Elias, 23 years old, and he had forgotten what it felt like to stand tall. He had grown up in a small village by the river, the kind of place where everybody knew your name, and nobody let you forget your failures. He was bright as a boy, the kind of child whose questions made teachers pause. But somewhere between that boy and this cold street corner, something had cracked. He had failed, again and again, and instead of seeing each failure as a step, he had stacked them into a wall and sat down behind it and called it home. He had decided, without ever saying it aloud, that he was not enough. Every closed door, every cold night, every sideways glance from strangers had become proof of something he already believed. He didn't see himself as a man who had fallen. He saw himself as a man who deserved to fall, and so the falling never stopped. One morning, an old man stopped in front of him. No coins, no food. He just stood there, looking at Elias with calm, unhurried eyes, the way a person looks at something they recognize. His name was Soren, a woodworker, a man who lived at the edge of the village, in a small workshop that smelled of pine and cedar, and something older than both. His hands were rough, his words were few, and he carried the kind of stillness that made you feel, somehow, that he had already been to the bottom of things and found something worth bringing back. "Come," Soren said. Elias almost didn't, but something in him, some exhausted, half-dead flicker, moved his feet anyway. The workshop was warm. Sawdust drifted in the light, and on the workbench sat a piece of oak, thick, gnarled, rough at every edge, almost ugly. "What do you see?" Soren asked. Elias looked at it. "A broken piece of wood," he said. Soren said nothing. He picked up his tools and began. Elias watched in silence as the old man worked, slowly, deliberately, with no wasted movement, and gradually something began to emerge. A curve, a line, a shape so clean, it seemed impossible that it had been hiding inside that rough and graceless block the whole time. Elias felt something tighten in his throat. "It was always there," Soren said quietly, without looking up. "The shape, the beauty. I didn't put it in. I just removed what was covering it." A long silence settled between them. "That's a piece of wood," Elias said. His voice was smaller than he meant it to be. Soren set down his tool. He looked at Elias. Not with pity, not with patience, but with something sharper than both. "Yes," he said, "and you are a man. So tell me, what is covering you?" Elias had no answer. But the question followed him like a shadow that night, moving through him the way cold water finds cracks in stone, slow and unstoppable. Not what broke you, not what hurt you, what is covering you. Because covering means it is not you. Covering means it can be removed. Covering means underneath it, the shape was always there. He thought about the boy he had been, the one who dreamed until midnight. He thought about the exact morning, not dramatic, not loud, when he had simply stopped arguing with the voice, when he had accepted the verdict. Without realizing he was even in a courtroom, he sat up in the dark. Something enormous shifted, slow, like a door that has been stuck for years, finally beginning to move. The next morning, he asked Soren to teach him, not because he believed in himself, he didn't, not yet, but because he had seen something true the night before and could not unsee it. He didn't need to become something new. He needed to be uncovered. Soren handed him a tool, without a word. Weeks passed. His hands bled. His early work was clumsy and raw. and twice he came close to walking back to that cold corner, because at least there, he knew exactly who he was. But Soren never rushed him, just worked beside him in quiet, steady presence, the way a river stays beside the land, without ever asking it to hurry. Then one afternoon, Elias finished a small chair. Simple, imperfect, real. He ran his hand along the curve of the wood and stood very still for a moment, not smiling, not crying, just present, in a way he hadn't been in years, like something that had been holding its breath inside him, had finally, quietly exhaled. Soren looked at the chair for a long time. Then he looked at Elias. "Still think you're a broken piece of wood?" Elias didn't answer right away. He just kept his hand on the chair, and when he finally spoke, his voice was different, not louder, not stronger, just settled, like a man who has just remembered his own name. "No," he said, "not anymore. That chair is still in Soren's workshop. Imperfect, a little uneven on one leg, but real, and made and standing. Stay with that image for just one more moment. Because that chair is not just a chair. That chair is every version of yourself you quietly gave up on, every dream you stopped calling a dream, every morning you looked in the mirror and believed the voice instead of questioning it. You are not broken. You are covered by old failures, old voices, old verdicts you accepted in your weakest moments. And a verdict accepted in darkness is not permanent. It is just a thought that was never properly challenged. The shape was always in the wood. Soren didn't carve something new. He simply had the patience and the faith to remove what didn't belong. You don't need to rebuild yourself from scratch. You don't need a new life or a different past or a louder kind of confidence. You need to start removing what is covering you, one chip at a time, one honest morning at a time, one small act that says, "I have not decided who I am yet."
So, here is your one real thing to carry out of this video. Not a worksheet, not a list, just this. The next time that voice shows up, and don't silence it, don't argue with it, don't beg it to leave. Just look at it the way Soren looked at that piece of rough oak and ask it quietly, with everything you have, what are you covering? Because somewhere underneath it, the shape is waiting. It always was.